Why Shavkat Rakhmonov is gonna dismantle Wonderboy Thompson. With Wonderboy vs Shavkat coming up this weekend at UFC 296, this is definitely a matchup that many are looking forward to. And although a lot of people do see Shavkat as a pretty heavy favorite, in my opinion, I also think that Shavkat is absolutely gonna run through Wonderboy Thompson. And after an impressive victory over Wonderboy, which is something that I'm fully expecting, I don't necessarily think a title shot is all that far out of reach for Shavkat Rakhmonov. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy MMA, I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson has had an extremely impressive career so far. Wonderboy doesn't have all that many skills besides his kickboxing ability, but he's so talented at kickboxing that he was able to get a ton of extremely impressive victories. And at a certain point, Wonderboy was seen as such a threat in the welterweight division that he eventually even got a title shot against Tyron Woodley. Now, although Wonderboy wasn't able to win a title against Woodley, or really in general throughout his UFC career so far, regardless of that fact, it is pretty clear that Wonderboy has had an extremely impressive career. But regardless of that fact, as of late, over the past year or so, it's pretty clear that Wonderboy is in a different phase of his MMA career. At this point, it seems as if himself, and also the UFC to an extent as well, are more interested in giving Wonderboy fun fights, meaning strikers out there, to where Wonderboy could really show off what he's able to do and not need to worry about the wrestling. As when you look at some of Wonderboy's recent fights, of course he fought Kevin Holland, who didn't want to wrestle whatsoever, and he was also supposed to fight Michelle Pereira, but of course that ended up falling out due to the fact that Michelle ended up missing weight. But when you look at Wonderboy's next opponent in Shavkat Rakhmonov, it's pretty clear that this guy can strike, of course, but he's more so of a wrestler out there. And I think a huge reason for why the UFC decided to give Wonderboy Shavkat is due to the fact that they were probably a little bit upset that Wonderboy didn't end up accepting the fight against Michelle Pereira after Pereira missed weight. But that kind of leads us where we're at today. But now, let's quickly look at Wonderboy's game to see what he does well out there. So as I mentioned before, it's pretty clear that Wonderboy's a striker out there. But in terms of his striking ability, Wonderboy is extremely prolific. He has a really nice ability to box out there. Wonderboy has a great ability to throw out that jab, he can throw uppercuts, hooks, crosses, can switch stances whenever he wants, and overall in terms of his boxing, it's pretty clear that Wonderboy is extremely talented in that department. But I would probably say the biggest aspect that jumps out to me personally about Wonderboy's boxing has to be his overall speed. Of course, Wonderboy also has a good amount of power in his shots, but I think the fact that he throws them with so much speed is a huge reason for why he's able to have a good amount of power on his shots. But in terms of his kicking game, it's pretty clear that Wonderboy is a phenomenal kicker, as he does a great job at throwing kicks to the legs, throwing kicks to the body, as well as throwing kicks to the head. And we specifically saw his kicking game in full effect against Kevin Holland, as Wonderboy was basically doing whatever he wanted with Holland at range, throwing kicks to the legs, body, and head at will. But overall, I would say the biggest couple things that jump out at me personally in terms of Wonderboy's stand-up ability is his phenomenal footwork. Wonderboy does a great job at utilizing his footwork in order to get in and out of range quickly to the point where he can hit his opponents, but his opponents can't hit him. And I think that factor, alongside with his overall striking IQ, is a huge reason for why it's almost impossible to beat Wonderboy at his own game. But now, let's move on to Shavkat Rakhmonov. Now, Shavkat hasn't had a ton of experience in the UFC, but in the limited sample size that we have seen Shavkat fight, he's looked extremely impressive, as he's finished literally every single person he fought, and he even most recently beat Jeff Neal, who in my opinion is a guy who I think is very, very talented. He was a guy that was able to stop a lot of the takedowns of Shavkat while also being a striker out there, but regardless of that fact, Shavkat was able to get the better of Jeff on the feet, and then he was eventually able to submit him and get another finish to add to his resume. And in my opinion, after that Jeff Neal fight, I think Shavkat Rakhmonov is even scarier now than I thought before that fight even happened. Because in that fight, we learned that if Shavkat isn't able to go to his main ability, which is his wrestling, he still has a great striking game out there, and he's a guy that's going to be able to adapt to a lot of different difficult situations and still find ways to win and still find ways to find finishes. So I definitely think this guy is going to be a real problem at the welterweight division division for years to come. But now, let's quickly take a look at his game to see what he does well out there. So in terms of his stand-up game, it's pretty clear that Shavkat is actually very good and very polished. Shavkat has a really nice ability to throw out that jab, throw left or right straights, throw uppercuts, hooks, crosses, and overall it's pretty clear in terms of Shavkat's boxing that he's actually a pretty good boxer out there. And similar to Wonderboy Thompson, I would probably say the biggest thing that jumps out to me about Shavkat's boxing is the overall speed that he throws his shots with. But probably the best aspect of Shavkat's stand-up game has to be his overall kicks, as Shavkat does a really nice job at throwing kicks to the legs, body, and head. But Shavkat specifically has a phenomenal spinning back kick to the head as well. And when you look at Shavkat's overall stand-up game, it's pretty clear that this guy is very dangerous in a lot of different ways. But now, let's move on to the best aspect of Shavkat's game, which is his overall wrestling. Now, it's pretty clear that Shavkat has a really nice ability to take his opponents to the ground. But once the fight does get to the ground, Shavkat is also very prolific, as he has a great understanding of what he needs to do out there, whether that means go for a great position or go for a submission if it's there. And I mentioned this in a lot of my videos, but if you have guys that have the ability to take the fight to the ground, but also have a great IQ out there in order to decide when they need to go for submissions and decide when they need to go for positions, it just makes that fighter extremely dangerous out there. And it's pretty clear that Shavkat Rakhmonov is one of those guys that have a great understanding of what he needs to do out there. And that goes for his stand-up and his ground game. So overall, when you look at Shavkat's game, it's pretty clear that this guy is a part of the new generation. He's able to do basically everything out there. He's very prolific on the feet, he's very prolific on the ground, and he has a great ability to finish you wherever the fight goes. And I do think that's a huge reason for why he's been able to be so successful so far, and a huge reason for why I think it's probably inevitable that Shavkat Rakhmonov is eventually going to be the welterweight champ. But with that being said, I would probably say the biggest weakness at this point at least of Shavkat's game is the fact that he does get hit a little too much at times. As specifically in that Jeff Neal matchup, it was pretty clear that Shavkat was getting hit clean and he even got hurt at a certain point. And if Shavkat didn't have a great chin out there, he probably would have got knocked out for it. So I definitely would like to see Shavkat improve upon his overall head movement in the future, and if he can work on getting hit a little bit less in the future than he did in the past, I think that would just make him that much more dangerous, and it would make it that much more inevitable that he'll eventually be a UFC champ. But now, let's move on to the fight between Wonderboy Thompson and Shavkat Rakhmonov and get into the reason for why I think Shavkat's gonna dismantle Wonderboy. Now, on the feet, I definitely do think Wonderboy is gonna have a lot of success. Now, at the same time, I will say I wouldn't be completely shocked if Shavkat also has some success, as he has proven to be a very polished striker. But if at any point Shavkat decides to take the fight to the ground, it's probably over at that point, as Shavkat is going to be able to take down Wonderboy relatively easily, as Wonderboy has definitely dealt with issues stopping takedowns in the past, but especially when you look at a guy like Shavkat who's able to take down virtually everybody, it's probably going to be relatively easy for him to take the fight to the ground. And on the ground, I see no reason to believe why Shavkat wouldn't be able to submit Wonderboy, or at least find a great position to the point where he'll be able to finish Wonderboy with ground and pound strikes. And I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if Shavkat's able to submit Wonderboy in the first round. So I definitely do think Shavkat is not only going to be able to find the win against Wonderboy, but he's also going to be able to find the finish. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening in this matchup between Wonderboy and Shavkat. And if you guys are interested on betting on this fight or betting on any other fight at UFC 296, head over to the first link in the description that'll take you over to BetUS, where for first time depositors, you'll get 125% of your money. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Shavkat Rakhmonov is gonna run through Wonderboy Thompson, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.